Shalom. Okay, so I had a dream on the 20th of November. That was a hot minute ago. I've been so busy that it took me a little while to really unpack this dream, and then it took me a while to get to a point where I can talk about it. So this dream, I'm not sure how to go about this, but I think I'm just going to read the dream first, and then I'm going to kind of talk about what God is saying in this dream as I'm picking out the symbols. Okay, it seemed like a short dream, but the depth to it is crazy deep, which is one reason why I hadn't shared it until now, because it just keeps going deeper. And God just kept bringing this dream back to me, so I know He wants me to talk about it. Also, this dream deals with World War II, which is fascinating. I see in my dream groups that God is talking about World War II to a lot of people in their dreams. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, here it is again. So I need to pay attention to this. You want to pay attention to those things. All right, so I'm going to kind of read the dream. I was at a giant yard sale. We have a children's consignment shop here called Rilana's, and it was like that, but it was outside, and it was for teens and adults, I guess. But anyway, it was outside, and it was dark outside, like in the middle of the night, dark. Anyway, I found some amazing deals. I can't remember. I know I bought dresses, but I can't remember. It seems to me that they were a mix of like formal gowns and blouses and skirts like you would see in the World War II era. Anyway, I found some amazing deals, and I was with my friends, and they're like, hey, we got to get to class. So we bought our stuff and ran to our class. And our class was outside, and it was dark still, like in the middle of the night. And we sat at these wooden desks like you would see in the World War II era. In our class, we were learning about history. At one point, the teacher had asked me to kind of help a group of girls that were struggling with some parts of the history. But what he was teaching us was about how the government wanted to kill off a lot of people. They wanted a lot of people gone, and they wanted certain people gone, or a lot of people. I couldn't quite understand. But they didn't want it to look like they were targeting certain people. And so, kind of like the mob, they target certain people and take those people out. So what they did is they would create these wars to take a lot of people out, and you wouldn't know who was the true target. You just think it was a war. Kind of like what God is saying right now is the verse about rumors of wars. There will be wars and rumors of wars. Like, there's lots of rumors of wars. Are they really wars? Anyway, in this dream, I hear throw them in the ocean when the history teacher was talking about how they wanted certain people gone, but they didn't want it to look like the mob. And so they created wars, and I heard throw them in the ocean. Okay, so very interesting. And in this history class, we were learning about how they shaped the Nazis to do their dirty work. And then they allowed the army to go to the families and tell them of their families' deaths. So they had to do dirty work. The people who created this war to get rid of people, their hands were essentially clean. They didn't have to do that stuff. They shuffled those jobs to other people and delegated those jobs to other people so they didn't have to get their hands too terribly dirty. All right, moving on. In this lesson, we were learning that certain people were evil and certain people were good, and you can have a whole family comprised of both evil and good people. The person that they highlighted in this class was the Schwarzenegger family. I don't know why. And they were like, Arnold Schwarzenegger is good. His brother is bad, but they're from the same family. And I don't even know if he has a brother, but they were showing that it's going to be hard to tell who's good and bad. But there's this exposure that's going to come, showing good and evil. And as we were finishing up the class, I had a really weird transitional dream. You know how you are all of a sudden in a different scene? That's how I was. I was flying over my grandfather's house, and I'd seen that new owners had bought his house and that they had insulated the house so much that the insulation was actually coming out of the chimney or coming out of the sides of the house. Okay. All right. Super interesting dream. Once you pick out the symbols, because right now it's just a weird dream, right? All right. So there's this giant yard sale. All right. And God is saying that there will be a large anointing that's going to happen. And there's mantles that need to be picked up and owned by people. And this happened because of a generation that didn't pick up their mantle, or they had left it. Okay. And I'm just wondering, maybe it could be the mantle that was left behind after World War II. And now this new generation needs to come up and pick up where they left off, is what I'm hearing. Pick up where they left off. So that's really, really interesting. The dresses being fancy to, daily dresses that you would wear back in the World War II era. This could be, that means this spans generation, this spans income levels, but it also could mean that we're picking off where people left their mantles in World War II, and we are going to bring it into something more refined. So just keep that in mind. We found these amazing deals, and God was telling me it's a deal you won't want to pass up. The wooden desks outside where my friends and I were together, and when I was unpacking the idea of me and my friends, he is saying friends of a feather flock together. So find your group, a group of like-minded individuals that really want to learn, who have crave learning about our true history. Find those people. We went to these wooden desks, and God is hearkening back to that World War II theme, and going back to basics and learning and kind of focusing on this era. He's bringing us back to this era for some reason. I have a lot of World War II dreams here and there. And when he does, I feel like he's highlighting, I want you to look at this era because it's a critical time period. And at that time period, we joined the UN. And that's, I haven't researched that to my heart's desire yet, but I know that's a pivotal thing. That was not actually a good thing. It was a pivotal thing for us. By the way, our federal taxes, the IRS is part of the UN. So all our federal taxes goes outside of the United States. It doesn't do anything here. So, oh, that's interesting because God talks about something else too. See, this dream just keeps going. I'll bring that back. Hold on to that thought. Put a pin into it. Hopefully I'll remember to circle back. All right. So anyway, at this time, it's dark outside. Okay. This is the dark side of our history that we're learning about. And he's wanting us to learn about our history and help teach others. Okay. Now let's go into what he was talking about with the history class, the content that we were learning in the class, how the government wanted people gone, or certain people gone, but they didn't want to look like the mob, which was interesting because back in the 1920s, 1930s, the mob was, actual mobsters were let out of jail and put in governmental positions. And so we literally had the mob running our government for a while. So I had totally forgotten about that until God brought that back in this dream. And days after I unpacked it, all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, that's right. So unlike the mob targeting people, the government wanted to look more subtle. So they created these wars to take them out. This is a historical thing. I believe this is the basis of many of our wars. Most of our wars are not what we've been told they are. I believe they are very, very different. Anyway, in World War II, they wanted to target certain people groups, right? And so they took certain people groups out by creating this war, and they took out a whole lot of other people and depopulated the earth that way. So I don't know in this dream if God is talking more about certain groups that are going to be targeted now, or if he's talking about the depopulation efforts that are going on now. And you might be thinking, there's no depopulation efforts going on now. Yeah, there is. There's a lot. If you've done your research on Georgia Guidestones, I've researched that over a year ago. I've been researching that. Agenda 21, Agenda 31, both talk about it. Bill Gates' dad was a eugenist. Soros talked about it. Rockefeller, I believe, talked about the need for depopulating the earth and how to go about doing that, if I remember correctly, in one of his speeches. So, yes, depopulation, there's a lot of people that want and have worked on depopulating the world. So I don't know in this dream if God is talking about they're wanting to take out certain groups, or if they are wanting just to depopulate altogether, which is fascinating because this circles back to what I was just talking about with the federal taxes and the IRS being connected with the UN. Because in my dream, if you remember, when God was showed me the mob, I heard throw them in the ocean. And as I was unpacking this, God kept on saying Titanic over and over and over again. And when I got to the part where the mob was in the dream and he said, throw them in the ocean, God was screaming at me, basically, Titanic. So this is fascinating. If you don't know the theories about the Titanic, I would recommend really digging in, looking at letters that were sent to people in that time period about the Titanic, really looking at photos. There's a lot of stuff that tells us that what we were told was not really true. If you go back to look at the trials that they had after to determine what happened with the Titanic, that will show you that what we were told was not really true. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit, excuse the pun. So at this time, there were some bankers that wanted to federalize our banks. There were some bankers that were like, no, that would not be good for people. Let's not federalize our banks. So what happened was all the bankers were scheduled to be on the Titanic, but some of the bankers left. The ones that wanted to federalize the bank had other things, like slept in, or their wife wasn't feeling well, or they just got off and didn't come on, got off before it launched. And the bankers that did not want the banks federalized, they died upon the Titanic. Now, what was interesting about the Titanic, there is a theory that it really wasn't the Titanic, that it was actually the sister ship Olympia that was built at the same time. Now, the Olympia was, or Olympic, I think it was Olympia, it was damaged when it had its maiden voyage, and they kind of patched it together. And then in its second voyage, it was so severely damaged, they didn't know if they were going to get it back to port. They couldn't get their insurance money from it. So from the letters that were written by people in that time period that were around the ships, they said it looked like they were making the Olympic look like the Titanic, and they switched the ships. And so that when the Titanic went out to sea and sank, they could get the insurance money from it, and also the bankers that were on it passed away. It's also very interesting. At this time period, they were going through a coal shortage or a coal strike, and so the Star Line had sent a boat out to close to where the Titanic was supposed to sink 3 days before it was supposed to get there, and it just sat there, and it was completely empty except for it had boxes of sweaters and blankets and things like that. Why? Why would you waste that fuel when you have a coal strike and a worker strike? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense unless you're expecting it to be there in a crisis. Anyway, so I think God is tying together, hey, they did this in the Titanic. They wanted to target certain groups of people, and innocent people died. They were targeting groups of people in World War II, and massive amounts of people died. And there are certain groups of people, like the Nazis, that did the dirty work. They like delegated and said the Nazis are going to do this, and these people are going to do that, and these people are going to do that. And God is saying there's going to be a time now that even that there's going to be a level of exposure. We're going to see more of this truth coming up. We're going to see that evil and good can exist in one famous family. It's going to be hard to tell them apart, but that exposure is going to come out. That's why he brought in the Schwarzenegger family. It's like, it's a famous family. And you're going to see that there's good people and bad people in one family. And so I think that was just very complex dream right there. God was throwing all kinds of connections and tying things together. And if you don't know our true history, you would miss those. So I think it was fascinating. He was piecing all those together. And like even me unpacking this with you right now, I'm still making connections to things. I'm like, oh, that's why God said that, or that's why that symbol's in there. So there's going to be a level of exposure coming. He wants us to dive into the truth. He wants us to get with people who are like-minded, that are wanting to learn about the truth, because that's the mantle he wants us to pick up. All right. So we need to get that mantle. We need to pick it up where our forefathers or grandfathers have left off. Now, at the end of this dream, this is fascinating. At the end of this dream, he has me fly over my grandfather's house. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my grandfather's house. My grandfather fought in World War II, and when he came back, he had this, I don't know if it was a one-room schoolhouse. I think it was. It was a schoolhouse. I think it was just one room, and it had a cellar in it, and he built a second story and put indoor plumbing in it, and that was the home for my mom and her family, and they grew up in it. And it's just that I love that house. It had a red pump outside to pump water. It just had a lot of history to it. And again, God ties it back to World War II and learning, because it was a schoolhouse, right? But my grandfather built it when he came back from World War II. But he's talking about, I want you to look forward, because I'm flying over this, and it's kind of a seer ability. Look forward to seeing the security, because this house has so much insulation. It was about ready to pop out, that there's going to be a security that is coming, that this everything, every nook and cranny is going to be covered, and there's going to be the safety and security in it. And at the end of the dream, as I was flying over my grandfather's house, everything was bright, like morning, and it was snowing. And anytime in the Bible that it talks about snowing, it talks about purifying things, right? And refreshing things, and exposure, and all of that. So God is saying there's going to be exposure, there's going to be a purifying, there's going to be a renewal, there's going to be a refreshing. And with it being light, that's a whole nother level of exposure, and not evil, like the dark times that we had gone through and that we are going through right now. History is repeating itself. I'm hearing that right now. History is repeating itself over and over and over again. So it's our job to really dive in and take on that mantle to understand really what the truth is, and not to take anything as what it seems. So that is what God is saying in this dream. Just keeps pouring into this dream. What a dream. What a dream. But God is talking to a lot of people about World War II in their dreams. Talking a lot about it right now, because a lot of people are saying we are going through another world war. So it's just a very different type of war, an invisible war. And Mr. 45 said that a lot too, that we are going through an invisible war with an invisible enemy. And anyway, so very interesting dream. I won't go into any more of that, because I hadn't tied those knots into it, tied those strings together sufficiently. But I bet that there's a lot to tie in there. But this is what God wanted me to talk to you about. So that's what I'm going to talk about. All right, that's what I just talked about. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Go in his shalom.